Look, I know we all trying to get our holiday photos off right now, me included. We got the snow, the lights, the trees, all the basics, but you can level that up at Sweet Home Chicago. That's the gingerbread-inspired holiday destination at the shops at Northbridge. Among the Instagram-worthy pieces, they got a full black and white house by 2D World. Seriously, it's gonna make you feel like you in a comic book, plus an entire Chicago-inspired gingerbread village. And you know they got drinks, apps, a DJ, and even retailer deals for your holiday shopping. Check it out at the shops at Northbridge on the Mag Mile, and you can learn more at the shopsatnorthbridge.com/Sweet Home Chicago. You don't want to miss one of Chicago's favorite holiday traditions this year, Zoo Lights at Lincoln Park Zoo, presented by Invesco QQQ and ComEd. You can wander through over 3 million lights and glowing displays, grab a friend and hop on the Ferris wheel, or, just stroll along with a hot cocoa or 2 or 3 and take it all in. Plus, they've got special events like decorating Christmas cookies. You can pop by when Mrs. Claus is there or bring the entire family for an elf movie night. Zoo Lights at Lincoln Park Zoo open now through January 4th. Learn more and get tickets at lpzoo.org/zoolights. Today on CityCast Chicago, Border Patrol is back in the city. What are the biggest education stories we're watching in 2026? And we're checking in on a local production of The Wiz. It's Friday, December 19th. I'm Jacoby Cochran, and this is what Chicago's talking about. We've got some amazing guests in the building with us today from the Tribune, Laura Rodriguez Presa. Welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you for having me back.
We've also got Chalk Beat Chicago, Sammy Smiley in the building. Good to have you back, my friend.
Thanks for having me again.
Before we jump into the big stories for the week, Laura, what's something you are looking forward to personally with the holidays over the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to going to the downtown Christmas Candle Market. And I'm really excited for a little bit of a nicer weather, even though we're not going to have a white Christmas.
Yeah, it was like right around Thanksgiving, we were wondering like, okay, Thanksgiving was covered in snow. Will Christmas be covered in snow? Now we're back to 30, 40 degrees for at least hopefully the remainder of the weekend. I will say I haven't gotten to a holiday market, but over the last 2 days, I've had myself 2 cognac cocos from Vitology, this new bar and restaurant in the South Loop. Oh, it's probably the closest I got to Christmas over the last few days beyond all of these gifts I still got to wrap.
Actually, I'm really excited for the holidays this year. I've been the Grinch the last couple of years. Where I've been like, I don't like y'all. I'm not giving y'all any gifts. I hope your Christmases burn up. I don't care if this year I'm feeling like maybe one of Santa's helpers. Like I've decorated my entire apartment.
You went from Jim Carrey to Will Ferrell? Come on.
I did. I like all of my doors look like Christmas presents. Mm-hmm. And then I have a bunch of different garlands around the house and a wreath on the front door. So, and it's just me by myself. I'm doing this for me. No one else.
What motivated the change of spirit?
This is a bit personal, but my grandmother had passed Christmas Eve 2018. And so it's been really hard for me to get into the Christmas spirit since her passing.
I completely understand.
But this year I was like, to celebrate her, I'm going to give it my best shot of being like a Christmas girly. I've went Christmas shopping. I've been to a lot of the markets around here. So I went to the One of a Kind show market that they have at Merchandise Mart. I've went to the Sauced Holiday Market at the Chicago Athletic Association. Yep. I'm going to the Chris Kendall Market this weekend before it closes up. And then I've also just been trying to get out to and be around other people who are in the same spirit. Mm-hmm. And I've been feeling like, yep, I'm going to honor my grandmother this year by celebrating Christmas.
Sammy, I absolutely love to hear that, G. As a person who was so very close to all of my grandmothers and have lost them throughout my lifetime, I was helping my sister put up my grandmother's, I think, 59-year-old tree this year. This sort of old gold tree, just kind of like stick the stems into like their designated spot and kind of go about your business. And I will say during this time, I also am thinking about her. That is a house we would pull up on to get our 1 or 2 presents in a 30-year-old Carson Peary Scott boxing bag, even though none of it came from there. And I feel it every year. And so I do appreciate you sharing that with us. And I do. I am glad that you are finding some ways to celebrate and memorialize your grandmother, despite what I know is, the simultaneous pain and joy of the season.
Yeah. And then I'm also like, I've crocheted everybody something
Come
in
on.
my family. So I hope they are thankful, because I definitely, my wrists are tired. I crocheted everybody something. Y'all better be happy.
Holiday markets, handmade presents. I ain't gonna, you might as well take 3 years off after this. Just to honor yourself moving forward. Every week on the podcast, we bring in some of these amazing voices to look back on some of the most important stories happening in and around our city. And it's no surprise we are starting here. Over the last few weeks, a lot of headlines and reporting has taken place around Operation Midway Blitz seemingly scaling back. The commander, Greg Bovino, had left Chicago. It looked like National Guard and Border Patrol troops were starting to dwindle as well. However, a lot of us woke up to stories earlier this week that Bovino and about 200 or so agents were spotted in the city of Chicago. Laura, can you catch us up here?
I think it was back in early November when we got word that Border Patrol, along with Commander Gregory Bovino and their camera crew, were leaving. They left, went to New Orleans, a couple other cities across the United States. But it is important to say that ICE and Border Patrol overall really never left our city, right? Just the amount of agents that were operating was not the same. But now they seem to be back. They're still spearheading their operation under the idea that they're catching, quote unquote, the worst of the worst and criminals, right? But we've seen the data even from the government that shows that most people that are getting detained are not criminals. They have the civil offense of crossing without authorization, but they're not necessarily convicted felons, right? That's what they were seen doing earlier this week, which was similar to what they did over the summer, over the fall, where they just randomly stop brown people and ask, where were you born? Are you an American citizen? If they cannot answer, or if they seem to be nervous or whatever they deem to be enough of a reason to detain them, then they detain them. And that's exactly what we saw. And so now we're hearing that they will be in the city for the next either few days or 1 to 2 weeks. I think it's important for people to know that even if Commander Gregory Bovino's not in town, Border Patrol and some agents are still here. And ICE in itself, and ICE agents, which carry out more targeted operations, they're still here. And I think that it's important for people to know as well that ICE agents, unlike previous administrations, are also carrying out collateral arrest. That means that if people are around someone that is undocumented and they happen to be undocumented, then they will also take them.
To put a finer point on it, we've seen the videos of agents largely in chain parking lots, engaged in car caravans around the edges of the city and the suburbs. Given that they're also carrying out some of these other arrests, as you just point out, and that where they have been spotted, protests typically follow at times, is Chicago police in any way aiding Border Patrol?
Ever since Border Patrol got here and people started to react, organize, I think it's really important to highlight that these people are not trained individuals, right? To go out there and watch or follow Border Patrol. These are just community members that happen to be there, that want to alert their neighbors that they're in the ground, right? That are here. And the reason why they're doing that, and I'll get to Chicago police in a little bit and I'll explain why, but the reason why they're doing that is because They've seen the way that these arrests are carried out, which many refer to, and as you mentioned, kidnappings or disappearances, right? And why do we say that, or why do people say that? It's because there's no trace left behind. Once people are detained, there is nothing or no one that can give you information as to where that person is, what is going to happen to that person. And that is what many people worry about, right? In previous administrations, they had the time to call a loved one and let them know where they're going. Their information would be uploaded to the ICE locator. They will know where they're going to go next. Their attorneys will be able to contact them. That is no longer the case. And so this is why so many people are so worried and start to follow Border Patrol once they notice that something's going on. Now,
And when you say follow, you mean a lot of people are in their vehicles following behind Border Patrol.
right,
Yeah.
literally tailgating them. Yes. And it started, we saw that happening at the very beginning of the Midway Blitz. The more people learned that that was the only way to kind of um, alert others, the more people that are starting to do it now. And so because there are so many more people, now Chicago police has began to answer, I would say, to Border Patrol calls for, you know, allegations of someone following them. And so that's when they step in. And for example, this week we got a 911 call, Border Patrol call Chicago police, alleging that someone had tried to ram them.
Mm-hmm. Which these are claims they've made multiple times before. And in other cases, it's been founded that they were actually the ones engaging in the sort of dangerous driving and the ramming of other vehicles.
Right. And we've seen this, there's no evidence for many of the claims that they have made. And so turns out that Chicago police ended up sort of stopping this person that was following them to question them about this alleged ramming, about this alleged, interference or abuse or whatever Border Patrol told police that they were doing. Obviously, Chicago police and Evanston police and other police around the city in our neighboring cities have said, no, we're not cooperating, we're not helping, but they step into quote unquote, they like to say crowd control, right? And I think that many, many times they do it to mitigate the situation, to avoid violence, whatever you want to call it. But then community members take it against Chicago police, and ultimately they view authority as the same one, right? We've never had people happy with Chicago police anyway. They've always alleged, excessive use of force.
And when crowd control is essentially you putting yourself between protesters and federal agents, but sort of guns and batons are facing in the direction of protesters, they can only read that as, in some ways, aggression. When your crowd control tactics look very similar to the tactics of federal agents. I remember outside of Broadview, people were saying, I couldn't tell the difference between state police and Border Patrol or ICE when things got chaotic.
Exactly. So it's, I think that's where there's this fine line, right? Of people don't trust Border Patrol. So people don't trust authority. They don't trust police. They take crowd control, or they take, yesterday, earlier this week, police stopping this person that was following Border Patrol as them helping Border Patrol that carry out these quote unquote kidnappings, right? So it's a very complex situation, and I think that we're gonna, Jacoby, like even if Border Patrol or Bovino left yesterday, this is an ongoing thing. They're coming back. They're gonna keep coming back unannounced, like they did this time around. And I think they did it to show politicians for them it's a political statement, and they will keep doing it. And they've said it a million times. DHS has said it from the very beginning. We never left. And that's where, that's something that Bovino said to one of our reporters. We never left. We're still here. And so we're going to keep seeing that happen.
Yeah. And it feels like every time they come back, the arrogance is up, the way they go protesters. I really appreciate that you mentioned that when the commander left, yeah, he may have taken the TV cameras with him, but when he came back, those cameras came back as well, because this is as much a media and propaganda campaign as it was ever a sort of an immigration campaign.
Oh,
And that's something
absolutely.
that has been very clear.
This is all for social media ultimately. This videos are all for social media, and they don't portray the numbers that are really behind the operation even. So we hear all these numbers. We heard from Midway Blitz 4,500 people arrested. Those don't really translate into deportations. They don't translate into arrest. They don't translate into detention. They don't even translate into releases. So that number is just what they like to say, but we don't know what that number really is. And people need to understand that. So out of those 4,500, it could very much be that only one third, maybe not even one third of them got actually deported.
Mm-hmm. Lauda, I really appreciate all of the work you have been doing this entire year to follow these operations. I have watched personally as you have been harassed online
Yes.
directly from immigration officials, and remain steadfast in this work. And so I just want you to know we really appreciate you.
Yeah, no, thank you for inviting me. I think that yes, thanks for mentioning the harassment from the federal government for the work that I've been doing. And I think part of the reason that they do that, they again, they like to say and use these big numbers, and they don't like when we point out who are the people behind those numbers, and they don't like when we post those faces. And I think that it's super important to keep doing that, because these are human beings ultimately, and beyond politics, beyond what Biden did, beyond what Trump is doing, the reality of what's happening right now is that families are getting separated. There are children that are left behind. There are people living back in Mexico alone, going back to a country they have never been back to. And those are truths that will eventually get to us in our society and the way we live.
You already know what time of year it is. Toy soldiers, sugar plums, and a rat king. The Joffrey Ballet's The Nutcracker is making its way back from December 5th through the 28th at Lyric Opera House. Joffrey's Nutcracker is one of Chicago's most beloved holiday traditions. Join Marie and her Nutcracker Prince on a fantastical adventure in Tony Award-winning Christopher Wheeldon's kaleidoscope reimagining set amidst the spectacle of the 1893 Chicago World's Fair. Marie awakes one Christmas Eve to be swept away by a flurry of snowflakes to the dreamlike fairgrounds of the World's Columbian Exposition, and she embarks on a magical adventure you'll never forget. Seriously, the trio calls it unforgettable. Tickets for the Nutcracker are on sale now at joffrey.org. Last time you and I sat down, it was in June of this year, and we were right at the end of a semester. We were heading into the summer, and there was a lot on the docket. Pedro Martinez was a couple of weeks from being relieved of his duties as CPS CEO. CTU, the Chicago Teachers Union, Chicago Public Schools, City Hall were all collaborating to try and lobby the state for more education funding. And now that we're here in December, Sammy, I've got two big questions for you. Sort of what were the highlights, maybe lowlights of the first semester of 2025? What are some of the biggest outstanding questions? And then what stories should I be paying attention to most going into 2026? Let's start with a 2025 back half recap.
Ooh, because it's been, since you mentioned it, I was like, wait, you're right. We Last time we talked,
It was a lot of shit going on.
I'm like, flashbacks are terrible. But
I ain't even mentioned protests on campuses, all the new laws that went into effect, federal funding. Right? Sammy is what y'all hear right now is Sammy Curley shaking her head like, Kobe, shut up. You already mentioned 3-4 things, G. I can't get down on all that right now. Let's start with these big ones.
Yeah, I mean, like when I think about it, I'm like, oh gosh. I mean, like now we're, the search for the next CEO of CPS is still continuing. It seems like to me there were some noise about who those candidates could possibly be to replace Pedro Martinez, and then all of a sudden the Board of Education, some of those members started being like, okay, we got to be quiet. We've signed NDAs. We can't talk about the process no more. We can't tell y'all anything. Y'all be blessed. Have a good day. That's what it's been feeling like. So we're waiting to see basically how was this process going to be, and especially with the lack of transparency that's happening right now.
Yeah. Are there likely any Chicago candidates to emerge? Because from everything we've heard, it's been, necessarily a nationwide search, but it doesn't seem like anyone from the land is being considered or was being considered right now. Like you said, who knows what the next steps are, but
yeah, I'm hoping that there's some people in the city that could be considered for the for the position. Simply because, like, Chicago is a different school district when you in comparison to some of these other school districts we're talking about. It's just not the same. But I haven't heard that, and I don't think my colleagues have.
Yeah,
so
understood.
Hopefully we'll hear something soon. But yeah, it seems everybody has been like tight-lipped now since.
How quickly things changed. The story of this time last year was, will they, won't they? They were doing the dance with Pedro Martinez. He was sort of holding his ground. The mayor was trying to convince him to get up out of here. And now we're here, and we have no idea who the permanent leader will be. To their credit, interim CEO Macklin King has held things down over the last few months.
It would be interesting to me if they're just like, actually, we're not going to go through. We went through this, but we just feel like it's just better to have consistency and stick with the interim CEO. But I don't know if that's happened before in CPS's past, so I'm not really sure.
Okay, so uncertainty, lack of transparency right now in that regard.
Mm-hmm. And so the other big story is that, like, now we're gonna go into a fully elected school board. So we won't have this hybrid situation. We'll have all 21 seats, 20 for the local voting districts, and then 1 for the president of the board. And I really hope Chicagoans know about it, because I'm hearing y'all don't know out there in the streets.
A recent survey came out that is giving us a sense into how aware Chicagoans are or aren't. What were the results of that poll?
Well, it was kind of depressing to me as somebody who reported on the legislation when it first came out, and now we hear, and it says roughly 2/3 of Chicagoans surveyed don't know about the elections that's coming up. Only 10% of folks out there can name their school board representative. I'm sad. But I think this probably happens with any major transition in government, is that some people are paying attention and some people are probably like, oh, God, what is this? This is some new stuff. What is going on here? And what I would say is that whether you have kids in Chicago public schools or not, your money does go to CPS. So you should be paying attention to what's going on at the district and knowing who represents your community or your kids' needs at the school district. And so you can also have somebody you can call on when something big happens and you have answers, because these are elected officials who are supposed to be answering your questions. I should be taking your calls. So, I think next year, hopefully all the newsrooms we get together again and have our election guides out, and that, we all do our best to educate people on what's happening during the Board of Education, like, elections coming up next fall.
All right. So We got the school board to be paying attention to. And to your point, I think it will be difficult to make a lot of Chicagoans aware of this race. You got congressional elections taking place, well, electing a new senator, that isn't going to be an incumbent for the first time in 30 years, a bunch of retirees, a gubernatorial race that's going on. And so to your point, this school board election, which, has been up and coming for years now, definitely deserves a lot more attention, given they're going to be the people who pick who the CPS CEO is. They're the people who will set the agenda for where Chicago public school investments should go. They have a big say in what the CPS budget looks like. And kind of speaking of budgets, last time we talked, people were advocating for the state to pony up more money. That has since been debated and passed. Not much extra money. Currently, the city budget is up for debate, in which Mayor Johnston wants to use a TIF surplus to provide CPS with, close to $500 million extra dollars, some of that so that they can pay the city back for a pension funding. Where are we at right now going into the next year in terms of CPS's ability to be sustainable budget wise for years to come? Or are we about to be looking at budget deficit after budget deficit, battle after battle?
I don't cover Chicago all the time. I'm mostly on the state education beat, and I'm always listening to what folks at the state side are saying, because they do give a good chunk of money to CPS, right? And so I was listening into the state board meeting on Wednesday, and it's not looking good on the state revenue side. It's not looking good for state imports and exports. And also it's like, if the state is not able to raise revenue and keep it consistent over the year, I cannot see them being like, okay, we're going to give more money through the evidence-based funding formula for schools. Besides, maybe they will keep it at an additional $350 million. I don't know if they would say, we'll just do flat funding. So no new dollars, just keep it at the same. I know that, the governor's office and lawmakers are really like, we have to at least keep up with the minimum. But we don't know, especially with all the stuff happening at the federal level. And I think also something to watch in 2026 is how the state is going to try to bulletproof itself from the Trump administration's policies.
I was just about to ask about that, both on the funding side, but also I know that there has been more legislation passed to try and protect childcare centers, public colleges.
Yeah, and Head Start is one of those programs that provide childcare and preschool, early childhood education to low-income families. And when the federal government shut down in October to early November, right, those folks were confused about what's going to happen with funding. And Head Start grantees are always working with super slim margins. They're always trying to figure out a way to raise money to make sure that they can serve their families, but it's nothing to play with. They need their money. So that's one thing. I mean, you do have state lawmakers trying to figure out what legislation they can pass or should pass to bulletproof the state. I just reported on the story about how lawmakers kind of quietly got rid of some of the race and ethnicity eligibility requirements for the Minority Teachers of Illinois scholarship. Actually, they replaced the scholarship program with a new scholarship program called the Teachers of Illinois Scholarship, which opens the scholarship program up to anybody. There's some limits there, of course, but it is they had to take away race because they're afraid that the federal government would come after the state, or that there'll be more lawsuits from conservative groups regarding DEI kind of initiatives. So it's a scary time. It's a very scary time for lots of reasons. Budget definitely, lawsuits is another, and then legislation that could come down.
Every episode of CityCast Chicago ends the exact same way. Me begging you to bring your ass back here for the next episode, but also with some good news. Traditions. As we have been critically covering Operation Midway Blitz, community members have come together to launch Operation Midway Bliss, an initiative to provide for the children who have been mostly impacted over the last few months. Lauder, can you teach us a little bit more about Midway Bliss?
Yeah, of course. So there's this group of people that just decided to start fundraising to buy gifts for those children specifically, but families that have been affected by the deportations or arrests. Even if someone's not deported, the family is disrupted because many times they take the parent who is the breadwinner, and so people are really, really suffering right now financially. And so this group is trying to at least provide some sort of joy during the holidays for these families, or that they at least don't have to worry about, some of the buying some of the gifts to make this a more normal Christmas.
Yeah. Yeah, they've already raised over $25,000 as of last week. They've partnered with 100 plus families.
Yeah, and they're going to be actually distributing some of those gifts this week and next week, so right before Christmas. So they're going to start doing that. Another thing that I wanted to mention, Jacoby, speaking of good news, is that on December 19, there is this event that's going to happen. It's called Todos Ponen, and it's spearheaded by Chef Diana Davila and Marcos from Carnitas Uruapan. I am in awe of the way that the community manages to come together. They are going to bring all different chefs from different neighborhoods for an event, pretty much like a culinary experience. And all of the money that will be fundraised on that event will be donated to families that were also affected. Now, the incredible thing about this event is that the money will come in gift cards to families, and those gift cards will only be able to be used in other smaller grocery stores. So it's sort of like this full circle of Latinos knowing that the families affected need this support, and then the businesses needed that support. So they're making this economy, you know, um, happen for them, and I think it's incredible that they're doing that. And so that's another, I think, a little bit of good news to leave this with.
Yeah. And I also just checked, and Operation Midway Bliss has now raised close to $32,000 of their $35,000 goal. Sammy, while folks are still out seeing the sequel to Wicked in theaters across the city, one small group of Chicago students are preparing for their debut of The Wiz. Can you take us to Ray Graham Training Center on the near South Side and tell us what's going on?
Yeah, I had the pleasure of connecting with the teacher there, like special education and theater teacher there. Her name is Sharon Toy Overton. She is a former resident of Hyde Park. She went to Ray Elementary School. She graduated from Hyde Park Academy. She comes from a musical family. Her mom was a pianist. Her dad played saxophone. She picked up singing, was a lead singer and a drummer in an all-girl rock and roll band in the 70s. And then, like, later on in her life, like, when she, like, came back to Chicago, because for a period of time she lived in LA, she came back to Chicago, got involved with the Black Ensemble Theater. Now, people who know
them.
Yes, right. Like, those who know, like that is such a monumental institution for Black creatives and artists in Chicago.
And they put on some of the best musicals, bar none.
Yes, and she has since then, over the past like 25 years, she's combined like her love for the arts and singing and acting, along with her love for educating students with disabilities. So all the students who will be in their production of The Wiz this on Friday, all the students are have disabilities, and they all have different roles in the play. So, like, for me, that's like such a wonderful thing, because it's it's she's saying like, I want everybody to be included. Everybody has a role, regardless of your disability. And when I went into the gym room to watch them run their lines and do their costumes, I wish I could go and see it, but I'm working at that time that they'll have it. But it sounds like it's going to be amazing. And she was such like the sweetest person I can meet. And she has so many stories about growing up in a time when a lot of Chicago and Black-owned businesses were open that allowed people to, have like talent shows and to perform and to try out their art. Some of those institutions are not here anymore. So like I told her during the interview, I said, girl, you need to write a book. You need to write a book about your life. We need to know.
No, I absolutely love this story. I was smiling from ear to ear the entire time I was reading it. I'm going to put it in our show notes, and I hope every single person listening takes some time to read more about Sharon Overton and the young people over at Ray Graham Training Center. They are making their debut today at King College Prep High School. Sammy, thank you so much for telling this story.
No problem. Like I said, I have been looking for a story to brighten my spirits, and to celebrate like the Christmas holidays coming up, because they're doing it right before they go on break. And it was just so nice to meet somebody from Hyde Park who was there like in the 60s and 70s. And also she was like, oh yeah, Shaka Khan is one of my friends. And I was like, you don't understand. And she was like, I'm sure you don't know some of these people I'm naming that I've been around and know. I said, I definitely know.
She said Robert
Shaka
Townsend
Khan.
and I used to just kind of kick it on the South Side.
She said her dad used to play saxophone for Ella Fitzgerald. I said, what?
You probably don't know Ella, Muddy, Jackie Taylor. You don't know what's going on.
You don't know that stuff. I was like,
I'm going to wrap us up with some good news that is in the same vein. Shout out to Social Works, whose warmest winter donation drive is ongoing well into January. They are looking for toys, hygiene items, warm clothes like thick socks and gloves and coats. If you're looking for some other events that are happening this weekend, make sure you follow our events calendar at chicago.citycast.fm. A few I'm looking towards are Bless the Dance Floor at Easy Does It Tonight, Sentido at La Parranda Boricua in Humboldt Park tomorrow from 4 to 6, and Slow Jams at Expat Saturday night. Of course, we've got more holiday markets and holiday drives available on our calendar. And if you want a special email every week with some of our favorite things happening in and around the city, then you know what to do. Sign up to become a CityCast Chicago neighbor at membership.citycast.fm. I want to give a huge thank you to our guest today from the Tribune, Laura Rodriguez Presa. Thank you for making time.
Thank you for inviting me again.
And from Chalk Beach, Chicago, Sammy Smiley, always a pleasure.
all right. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Before we get out of here, I just want to give a huge thank you to the people who make CityCast Chicago and Hey Chicago possible, including our executive producer, Samal Alisea, our producer, Michelle Navarro, our Hey Chicago newsletter editor, Emmy Mack, our social media manager, Rick Homuth, roving producer this week, Matthew Rogers. The music we all love is from Sam Thousand, All the Kimonos, Mark Greenberg from the Mayfair Workshop. Additional music this week from AJ and Cecilia Sanchietti, courtesy of Triple Scoop Music. And my last thank you, as it is every single week, is for you, the people who listen to CityCast Chicago, who make time to read our newsletter, all of the people who signed up this week and last to join our CityCast Chicago neighbors. Again, we've got some exciting things planned when we celebrate 5 years in 2026, and we want to make sure you have the invitation. So head over to membership.citycast.fm and lock that in now. We're going to be back bright and early next week. We'll talk to you then. Peace.